Hey, Resin Heads. Today I'm talking to one of my favorite digital sculptors, Zane Rogers. All right, so let's get started. Let's make 3D. I see you all over the Facebook groups and Instagram. And I chatted with you on Instagram a little bit about, I mentioned that I was interested in sculpting, 3D digital sculpting.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, but I'm not formally trained. And you said you weren't either.
Yeah, so I have a little bit of a background in 3D from like a long time ago, but just basically YouTube videos is what I learned, or learned how to use the program and stuff like that, and a little bit of the fundamentals of sculpting, I guess.
So you use ZBrush?
Yep, I use ZBrush, use Blender for some rendering, and I've used Blender in the past for sculpting as well, but mainly just ZBrush.
So do you have any art background at all?
Nothing not like a degree or anything like that. I like to draw when I was a kid.
Right.
I draw like monsters and all that kind of stuff, and then I kind of fell out of it, and kind of got into 3D modeling again when I was like 13, and then fell out of it again, and then at 24 picked it up for a little bit, and then on and off did it up until I was like 27, 28, and then I really started to just kind of sink in and really try to learn it and kind of get better, or you know what I mean, try to progress as much as I could. So,
Yeah, you mentioned that your dream is to be a full-time 3D artist in one of your bios.
Oh yeah, so I actually am full-time now.
Oh, you are?
Yeah. Most of that's just due. I have really low living expenses, so a lot of that helps out, and family that can help take my son if necessary and stuff like that. So it works out.
So
But
you're on several marketplaces?
yep, I am on CG Trader, Cults 3D, and then My Mini Factory as well.
So how does that work? Can you explain how you go about, from start to finish, how you go about making money doing 3D sculpting?
Yeah, so I mean, for me, I feel like I'm kind of lucky insofar as I feel like I've found kind of an art style that's a little bit unique, and then basically I just kind of sculpt whatever I want. I have an idea in my head, and I kind of I don't really draw anything out. I just all in my imagination and just kind of keep pulling shapes until I, find a form that I like, and then I just keep working it into, into a character, or a creature, or a piece of jewelry, or wall art, or something. And then after that, I'll, get it prepared, and then I'll do a test print, and then, I have a Patreon too, so a lot of my Patreon supporters will get that model too. Which is nice because then they can print it as well and they can give me feedback, because they'll have machines and stuff that I don't have to do. And then I upload it to the other websites and try to promote myself. Whenever I upload something, I, will post about it on Instagram or Twitter. I think for a lot of people too, using hashtags, anything that's relevant, if you're designing something and you want to really get your reach out there, hashtags, they're great for that kind of stuff.
You were talking about doing the prototyping. What kind of machines do you have that you do? I know you have an FDM. I've seen the FTM versions of your prints.
Yep. I have. I've had quite a few different 3D printers. The ones that I have currently right now, I have two Elegoo Mars resin 3D printers, just the original Elegoo Mars. Those are probably my absolute favorite printers ever. Resin FDM that I've owned, they've just been great. I have an Ender 3. I have two Ender 3s, I have an Ender 5 Pro, and then I have a CR10 V2 as well. So,
the CR10s are nice. I have a CR10S.
mm-hmm.
I think, is it
And you like
CR10
it?
Pro S? I don't remember.
I think it goes like the CR10 and then the CR10S and then the CR10 V2, I want to say.
Oh, okay.
But I'm not sure. But yeah, I mean, I love my CR10 V2. If I could, you know what I mean? I would strongly consider anyone getting into FDM printing, you know, if they're not looking at a Prusa or something, to get something like that. You know, Creality products in general, I just have had really good luck. Even my Ender 3 and Ender 3 Pro, Ender 5, all been amazing machines. So
the first FDM printer I had was a Tinkerine. You ever heard of those?
no.
It's a Canadian company, and it was all laser cut beechwood or
so kind of like
birchwood,
the
I
old
think.
Thinkerbots, kind of, or like those guys, or the MakerBots.
Yeah, well, the kits, and I think it's birchwood sheets that they laser cut, and then you have to put it all together. And just messing with it, I mean, you had to mess with it a lot to get it to work. That was like 2011 or 12, I think.
Oh, wow, yeah.
It was like a $1,400 machine, and that was just getting it in a kit. That's not even getting it assembled, you know?
Yeah.
When I got the CR10, it was, you didn't even have, just a little bit of assembly, and then you could print with it right away, and you didn't even have to mess with it. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Fidget with it at all to get it to work. But
yeah, exactly. The rate of advancements on these things is crazy. I think, I had bought in in 2016 because I was playing around with 3D modeling a little bit, and I bought a FlashForge Finder, which had like little 5.5 inch build plate, very small. And then I ended up trading that out for a monoprice Maker Select, you know, and trying that for a little bit, but just life got in the way. So I ended up selling them both and getting out of 3D printing for a while until I came back.
At what point did you notice the resin printers?
So that was kind of interesting. I had been hosting stuff on CG Trader for like, some of my files have been on there for almost, I want to say like 4 or 5 years now.
Oh, wow.
Some of my really, really old designs, you know, because I would sculpt for a little bit and then I'd drop it for 2 or 3 months, and, you know, it was never a real serious thing. But some of my older stuff was on there, and then somebody had sent me some pictures of some of my designs printed, and the fidelity was incredible. And I was like, what is that? You know, and he was using an Anycubic photon, and I was like, an Anycubic what? You know what I mean? I had no idea. You know, I remember looking at it briefly and being like, so the screen on the front, how
does the thing work?
I just could not wrap my head around how it worked. I had to do a bunch of research on it. And then I bought an Epax X1. That was my first resin printer, and I didn't much like it. I know a lot of people had really good success with it, but I got bending all the time, and it's just a mess. And then I just took a shot at the Elegoo, and I've never looked back, you know.
I was thinking about getting an X1. I have a Mars and a Mars Pro, and I love both machines, but the Mars Pro is really awesome with the LED array. You can actually get a better exposure, like so your supports get more fully exposed because of the different angles that the light hits. You know, like almost exposes it in a more uniform fashion than when you have the 4 LEDs in the middle, and it just kind of spreads out that way instead of straight up.
Yeah.
And the edges, you end up with edges on the outside when you're trying to print on the outside of the build plate that don't quite come out as well. I noticed you could print thinner and stronger supports. So like your contact points on the print, you can make them really small, and you didn't have to go as deep with them, and they would be really strong. So literally you can almost peel those supports off the print, and they don't fail on the Mars Pro as opposed to, I mean, on the Mars you probably get it to work, but you have to, up the exposure times a little bit more.
Yeah, tinker with things a bit. Interesting. I know for me, something that's worked really great as far as removing supports with almost no issue, because a lot of my models have overhangs everywhere. I kind of sculpt it out and then hate myself after, because I'm going through trying to support everything, and I've got to I don't know, do some hardcore math to try to figure out how I'm going to pull it off. But I've been taking my models and then letting them sit in pretty much, it's like 25% IPA and then 75% mean green.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll let them sit in that solution for 8 hours to up to 24 hours, and then pull it out, and then the supports just fall off.
Yeah, they're like almost like rubber, right?
Yeah, you can take your finger and you just rub it against the surface, and they just wipe right off.
Yeah.
You got to be careful if you've got a small little ear or something on there, because that gets really soft in the solution. And then I cure them in water. I basically have a transparent little Tupperware tub, and I'll put some water in there, throw it in there, close it, and set it out in the sun, and just let it cure. And that's given me some of the cleanest prints that I've done with almost no. You can't really see the supports on it either, because they just come right off. So
yeah, the water curing. I actually did a video on that. It's a pretty popular video. Where I talked about how the oxygen, there's less oxygen in the water, and oxygen inhibits the curing.
Okay.
It actually, it does a better job of curing, because the oxygen isn't mixing with the resin and the curing. So you're actually just keeping the oxygen off the resin.
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
A lot of people ask a lot of questions about that in the forums, and I'm like, I need to research that a little bit. And then I looked on YouTube, and I noticed nobody talked about it at all.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually did a little video on it and talked about the science of it. And since then, I've learned that if it's salty water, it's even less oxygen. And then if you warm up the water, there's even less oxygen than that. So you can get almost all the oxygen out of the water by adding salt and heating it up.
And the heat.
I haven't played with that yet, but I just learned that since I did the video. So.
Oh wow, I'll have to try that out. That sounds like it could be interesting. I know, because there'd be times where I just cure in sunlight or with the UV light, and you get parts that some of the resins seem to leak out, and you get bumps and other things, or it'd be a yellow color, kind of dripping, but then it would cure. Maybe I'm not cleaning them well enough, but I'd experienced that a few times. But when I do the water curing, it's very clean. So,
do you use an ultrasonic cleaner at all?
I do not yet.
Because I started using that, and it's literally, you don't have to even use a brush on it or anything. You just pull it out. Really? And it's clean. And I do mean green with it, just solid mean green, and then I actually spray it with a spray bottle with alcohol, and then I rinse it in water.
Oh.
Well, and I take the supports off right after I rinse it with alcohol.
Okay.
But on that snail, the skull snail, I was thinking this is going to be a nightmare with supports because all the little ridges on it and everything. But I didn't have any problems. I mean, I actually did a video on that too with your print, with your skull snail, and I show where I'm just peeling the supports right off, and they just come off like butter. I mean, really super easy.
Yeah, that one I feel like I overshoot all the time on supports, and I put too many. But I had seen some people print it with way less, and I need to look at how they're doing it, because I kind of go overkill on it. But that's awesome that I
did auto supports with Prusa, with the Prusa slicer, and then I export it into Chi2Box. So I export the STL with the supports.
Oh, okay.
And then bring that into Chi2Box and just don't do any supports in Chi2Box. I
think I actually saw that video. Now that I think about it, it sounds really familiar. I think I did watch it. I think you might have linked it to me.
Probably, yeah. How would you describe your style?
It's kind of hard to describe. I kind of take a lot of influences from all over the place. A lot of people kind of say it's like Geiger-esque, or you know what I mean, that kind of biomechanical stuff. The H.R. Geiger is a big influence. Peter Grick is another artist. I think he's from Austria. I could be wrong though. He's another kind of biomechanical or artist. And then there's a lot of people in the ZBrush community that are really, really good. I probably am not pronouncing his name right, but Zilong Zhu he's a Chinese artist. He does a lot of dragons and stuff like that, but I really like his art style. Try to kind of borrow from that.
Do you do any dragons?
I do. I have 3 dragons, I believe. I have a dragon. No, 4 dragons. I gotta think here. I have 2 dragon busts on my on all the different platforms. Then I have kind of more of a traditional. I wish I had a print right next to me. I don't think I have one here, but kind of a more traditional kind of Oriental style dragon. And then like a little, like kind of a more cartoony dragon as well.
I noticed on your YouTube channel, you got a quick sculpt on there that's pretty cool, where you actually like sculpt a bust with horns and kind of shows what your whole process.
Yeah, I try to do those. I'm going to try to doing those more, especially for my Patreon, because a lot of people like to see the process. But I think I even have one on YouTube for a mask design that I did as well.
Do you use a space mouse? Have you seen those?
For as far as like designing, or
yeah. Have you seen? So you know what they are?
No, it's a space mouse. Let's see it.
Let's see. It's a device like this. You basically you can rotate, push and pull on it and rotate it.
Oh, interesting.
And it allows you to manipulate the object in 3D space.
Oh, cool.
And instead of trying to move the object around with your mouse, you use this, and it's like almost like a joystick, but it's got push and pull, and you can twist it to rotate. And so it's got, like 4 more axes on it than a mouse would have.
Interesting. What are those run?
They're like $140, I think, and it's really heavy too. It's really solid, so it's almost like a heavy paperweight. It doesn't go anywhere when you use it, but you use it with the opposite hand that you're using to sculpt with, and it's really super intuitive.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. I'll have to look into that. Yeah, because I'd have to see how that integrates. I use a.
There is a problem with ZBrush though. It's not compatible with ZBrush.
Oh, it isn't, huh?
It works with.
I wonder what it was.
What's the other one? What's the free one that you mentioned? The other
Blender.
Blender. It works with that, but for some reason ZBrush didn't write an extension for it. I don't know why they would do that.
I wonder if you could find a third-party extension. I know ZBrush has
been, but I don't know if ZBrush. I don't know if there's like some kind of conflict there where they don't want it to work with it, or maybe they're working on their own device or something. I thought
they're very proprietary in their, and how they kind of do things. But so that could kind of make sense. Totally.
But if you use a Blender, I know that Blender's changed quite a bit, and it's a little more intuitive than it was before. Like I've tried to learn Blender before, and I was like, what is this? Even compared to ZBrush, it was harder. And they didn't have all the sculpting tools in there.
Yeah, I took a peek the other day at some of the stuff that they had in their sculpting suite. And, there's a lot of people that have tried to be, basically, hey, why don't you try Blender? Why don't you move over to Blender and, sculpt in Blender? But it's just on the optimization side of things and just how streamlined everything is in ZBrush. I don't think Blender's quite there yet. You can do a lot of really cool things with it, and I don't think the tools define the artist, but
right.
I definitely, favor ZBrush a lot. But then again, what I do is sculpting, for hard surface stuff, or, if you're going to design like a castle or something, I think Blender would be the best route to go.
Right. They say no matter what you learn in you can pretty much transfer it to anything once you get the mechanics of the program down. But like the
I would say
techniques are the same.
Yeah, I would say that's fairly true. I mean, the thing with Blender too is it's like kind of like, what do you want to know? There's so much that you can kind of skip over if it's not, for 3D printing, it's like you want to learn how to export stuff into an STL file for 3D printing, how to decimate things, and you're going to want to learn how to box model or use like the modeling set, and you'll probably want to learn how to sculpt too, but like, that's it. There's so much, other things that it does, but you can just kind of forget all that,
And it does all kinds of animation and like special effects stuff, all kinds.
Oh yeah, it's all encompassing. You can even just use it for making cartoons, 2D,
oh, right. 2D
animations. You can, so it's quite a powerful piece of software. But that's the thing, is ZBrush has this one narrow little area that it does, and it does it really, really well, whereas Blender tries to do a lot of things, and overall it's really good, but in those specific areas there's probably a better program, you know what I mean? But it's all about how it all fits into what you're trying to do, I guess.
How did you pick ZBrush?
So, well, when I was like 13, I was really, really interested. I think I had watched the Final Fantasy, the movie that came out in like 2001, 2002, and it was like in theaters, and it was completely CGI, and I thought it was just the most amazing thing ever. And so I started to learn a free program called Animator, and learning how to kind of box model and even do some basic animations and stuff like that. And so that kind of got me thinking like, oh yeah, I can, do art in a 3D space, Then I kind of dropped that for a few years. And then when I had graduated high school in like 2009, I didn't really know what I was going to do after. And I thought, maybe I'll go to school for art and I'll get into film and try that. And I'd been looking through some of the coursework, and ZBrush was a program that was mentioned in it. And I was like, that's kind of a cool name. What does it do? And I kind of looked into a few videos on it, and I thought it was crazy, the details and everything that people were able to do with it. And this was back in like 2009. And, but I'd never, and then I went online. I was like, oh, I'll buy it. They have another software, Zbrushcore, which is, I think it came out in 2016, and it was really geared towards the 3D printing stuff, because that's a lot of people started to get really into it back then. It doesn't have quite a few of the tools that ZBrush has, but I mean, it's a very good start off point. I think it's $10 a month you can do, or you can just buy it for $120. So if somebody was to use, say, Blender and then Zbrushcore for sculpting, I think that they'd have a very, very good system set up. You know what I mean? Very good pipeline for creating stuff for 3D printing,
right,
with just those two alone. So
I noticed some of your photos. I can't tell if they're rendered or were you working with someone that was painting some of your prints?
Yeah, I've actually, so I sell the physical copies of my prints as well, which is why I have so many. So I run an Etsy store, and then there's a bunch of Facebook groups I'm in that I'll sell the designs in. And I met a few people that have been painters, and they'll buy kits from artists and paint them, and that's kind of their hobby and stuff. And so they bought in my stuff before and then painted it up really cool, and that's always fun to share, because they'll just take it in a direction I could never have even imagined, but it works out really well, so that's always a lot of fun to do.
What advice do you have for someone who's interested in getting into digital sculpting? Where should they start?
Well, I mean, I would say that if I could do it all over again to start, I would just, probably start with Sculptress, just to see if I like it, just to see if if there's something fun about it. And then if you like that, I would go into looking at possibly Zbrushcore. But then again, with ZBrush just being so cheap at $34.99, then you could just jump right into that, and that's probably going to have most of what you need if you're designing like minis or something, tabletop miniatures and stuff like that. It'll probably have most of the tools in it to make that. And there's a lot of really good tutorials online as far as like how to design an axe, or how to make a house in ZBrush, or how to design a face, or how to sculpt a face. YouTube is just, I don't think I've paid for a ZBrush course in 6 years, you know what I mean? Because just everything is on YouTube. You can go over to Pinterest too. I have entire boards of just little like little UI tidbits, where to find a certain thing, how to prepare a model for, decimating it and getting it ready for 3D printing, stuff like that. So, I mean, there's lots of resources out there. And then the other big thing would be to just try to find something that, and it's easier said than done, but find something that not a lot of people are doing, and then kind of sink into that, and try to do that as much as you can. You know what I mean? I feel like I've been lucky because I kind of came in with a style that's a lot different than a lot of designers are doing, and I feel like that's helped me kind of generate income and stuff like that. So
it is a really distinctive style. A lot of times I'll see like something on Instagram and I'm like, that's Zane. You could totally tell. There have been a few though that I've been fooled on where it was like, that looks like a Zane one, but then it turns out it's not. Is there somebody else that does a style that's almost similar to yours?
There are quite a few people that I think are styled similarly. A few that I'm friends with on Instagram and on Facebook and stuff. One of the big ones, and he's a big inspiration as well, is Tom, and I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Thomas Whittlesbach. And he has been pretty big in ZBrush community for a long time, and he makes jewelry and some collectible items and stuff. And he's got a very kind of Geiger sort of style as well. So we get kind of mixed up a lot. I think it's funny because I think he's 10 times better as an artist than I am, but so I'm always flattered. But
are there marketplaces specifically for jewelry?
As far as like the STL files for jewelry, or like the physical
prints. Like I've done some jewelry with on Shapeways before.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, like send them the file, and then they'll make the print in whatever metal you want them to make it in.
Yeah,
Are you familiar with any other marketplaces that, like, how does this guy sell his jewelry? Or you do some jewelry as well, right?
Yeah.
You just sell the STL files and then jewelers use that to make jewelry, or how does that work?
Yeah, so basically I've actually used Shapeways twice too. I designed like a pendant for my mom and another one for my grandmother, and used Shapeways to get it casted. And they've been pretty decent, but
just takes forever.
You're talking like 2 months before you get it, or maybe even longer. But usually I'll just sell the STL files to people that like to make jewelry. I'm actually thinking about getting a pack together on my mini factory of all the jewelry I've done, and then just releasing it under kind of a, like, you pay, I don't know, $15-20 and you get 20 designs, but then they're free use, so if you want to cast something in high grade silver or whatever, and you want to sell it, you're free to do that. Versus like people who just take your file and just go crazy and sell it without your consent.
If they're going to take it anyway, you might as well get some money for it, right?
Exactly. So trying to do something like that. I wanted to get into doing jewelry, but like then you're looking at buying, probably another $1,000 worth of equipment um, to get something that, will look decent. Although I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that would be like, no, you can actually do it way cheaper. You're just doing it wrong. But like, at least what I was looking at for like the systems needed, it's quite an investment. So I'll just leave that to the people that can do it.
Other question I had was, so how is the money? Is it pretty good, or it's obviously enough for you to make a living on?
Yeah. And for me, it's going to vary for everybody. If you've got, my living expenses are very low. I don't own a home. I rent a house, and I actually, because it's owned by a family member, I get, it's like, why rent anywhere else? You know what I mean? If I'm going to pay twice as much, I might as well just pay them. And so I'm very lucky in that regard. But my bills are pretty low. I make more money than I did when I was working full time, making $16 to $17 an hour. So I make more money than when I was doing that after paying taxes and everything. Mm-hmm. So I'd say it's pretty decent money. But then again, I do a lot of physical sales of my items too. So I'm always sending out packages, printing stuff, cleaning stuff up, and so that can be a lot of work. I would say roughly half of my income comes from digital, and then half of it comes from the actual physical sales and doing that kind of stuff.
Do you use a separate marketplace for the physical stuff, or is that all through the same portal?
Yeah, so I use for physical stuff, I use Etsy. Dark Artifact Design is my Etsy store. I use that for most of my physical product, and then there's Facebook groups I'm part of that are for art sellers and stuff like that. I'll also use that. Instagram as well. I'll use Instagram to sell stuff. And then My Mini Factory, I believe they were talking to me about this a few months ago, of possibly starting a service soon where somebody could buy a model off the marketplace, but if they don't have a 3D printer, they would have a 3D printing service that would print the model and send it to them. And then the artist cut would be a little bit bigger because it's a physical product. So it'll be interesting to see when that happens. I feel like that's kind of where things are heading in some ways.
What's going to be your next resin printer?
I would like to get the Saturn. The Saturn, to me, just at the price point that it's at, and I believe it has a 4K screen, right? It's that 4K screen and stuff. Monochrome. I think that's going to monochrome, and monochrome basically means that it's all, like you were saying with the Pro, right? It's all the level array of lights.
Yeah, it's RGB versus, which is basically a phone screen, versus the old monochrome, like the old computer screens. So it's either all white light or blocked light. And I guess there's an issue with UV getting through light that's RGB. Mm-hmm. And the screen itself absorbs some of that UV light, which is why it doesn't last very long. Whereas the monochrome screen passes that light through it, and it doesn't absorb as much heat. So the screens last a lot longer. I just had this long discussion with Garrett from 3D Print Farm.
Yeah.
It's all about the monochrome screens. We had a big long discussion about it, and he explained the difference between the two. So
nice.
That's the only reason I know.
Yeah, most of my knowledge has just been peripheral. I'll see something on Twitter or Instagram or in the Elegoo forums and just kind of briefly look at it. But just because the quality that I've experienced with my Elegoo printers, and I've gotten really good support too. Anytime I've had issues with them, they've been really nice to reach out and stuff. But yeah, I'll probably go with the Saturn. Otherwise, for like a larger scale thing, I've been talking with Tech a little bit about the Peopoly Phenom. I suppose Peopoly and Tech, they're owned by the same company, or they are the same company. But
really?
I think so.
They
I'm not quite sure what it is, but they connect somehow, because
okay.
I'll have to get back on that. But I know that they are ran by the same person. I want to say, I could totally be wrong, but looking at the Peopoly Phenom too, that large format printer, that one looks pretty crazy. It's kind of tough, because I'm in the point now where I've gotten enough FDM printers to make bigger things, but the quality isn't quite what I would want it to be, But then it's like, do I spend another $500 on a larger printer, or do I just, save up another 15 in addition and just get a Phenom? You know what I mean? Because I know people that I have a Patreon supporter that has one, and a mask that takes me, 3 days to print will take him 16 hours to print, and half the supports, it looks great all the way around. And it's like, man, if I could get my hands on one of those, like, game over, but
you could almost print on the Phenom, I think you could print a helmet, like a full-size helmet, right?
Yeah. They got a huge, actually, when Uncle Jesse did a review of the Phenom, I think on his channel, one of my mask designs, he printed like a full mask design for.
That was that. Was it a yellow one?
Yep.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
He was. I think he was using
yellow.
Yeah, and he was using Tech Fast green. I think was because I've used the Tech Fast green a lot. I like that's pretty much been my go-to resin too, for the most part. Tech. I used Elegoo's brand is good, but Tech to me just seems to. The amount of failures I have is like 0, and if they do fail, it's usually my fault. But they've been great as far as that's the resins that I use for.
Have you used their clear resin at all?
They're clear?
Yeah.
Yep, I have. I actually have a few bottles of it. Just for what I do. I basically, so somebody will buy something from Etsy. They'll buy a sculpture, and I already have it pre-sliced and ready to go with all the fast settings on it. So I haven't used the clear or messed around with it as much as I would like, because it has some different settings.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So then it's like, well, if I want to do that, then I got to go change settings and then, do this and that, when I just really.
It seems kind of tricky. I've tried to print with it, and I end up with a lot of failed supports, but I just haven't spent the time to dial in the settings on it.
Yeah, I had a little bit of that, and I had a little bit of banding. I'd have to look at my computer to see what settings I have for it. They're easy. I don't know if you've tried their easy. It's like a clear kind of amber colored. It's really pretty, but that stuff is also very hard to get the supports to print properly on. I think it's like just too thick almost. I don't know. But
yeah, it seems almost like gummy kind of.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, as far as, making a profit with 3D printing, I think one of the biggest things is to just kind of, especially if you want to get into designing and stuff like that, and just making kind of less, not so much practical prints, but more like the tabletop minis and things like that, is, just get into ZBrush and learn a lot about anatomy, get into that. Artisan Guild, they do really, really well. I think their Patreon has got like 7,000 Patreon supporters. And then you can go onto My Mini Factory, and they have catalogs upon catalogs of designs to buy from. They probably make huge amounts of money, but you know, their designs they're really good. They're really good at what they do, but you know, they've got it down to a science as far as like making minis, and they post most of their their YouTube channel has a lot of their time lapse videos of making their models and stuff too. So if anybody's really interested in that, I would also check out their Artisan Guild channel, because they do great work, and you can really see kind of their workflow, how they're designing these things, you know,
and they do the
and how that
tabletop.
all works.
Is that tabletop gaming stuff they do?
Yeah, and honestly, I feel like, you know, for a lot of people, get into that. You know what I mean? If you're looking to make some money with 3D printing, get into that, because there's a lot of money to be made there. I feel like there's a lot of potential for a lot of things, and that's what I feel like a lot of people are buying, you know, 3D printers for now. It's not really that they're looking to, you know, build miscellaneous things around their house to like fix stuff. It's you know, they're into D&D and they want a castle for their D&D game, and then they're going online and looking up, you know, they'll go to My Mini Factory and they'll see a castle that you designed or something, and then it's perfect for their campaign. They buy it, and you know, boom, you just made $10. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I've seen there's guys that make the tiles for and the trees and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And
I'm lazy over here, because I've thought about doing that too, and kind of my style, building like tileable buildings that are all kind of ornately designed and stuff. And you know, that's been kind of an idea I've been thinking about doing as well, because I see those designs, and I, you know, just looking at the amount of views that they get, and you know, how popular they are, because I see them all over Instagram with people 3D printing too. So it's like there's some money to be made there if you even, you know, just building good architecture, just cool buildings for like a fantasy setting. You know, you can make a lot of, you know, you can make a good amount of money. At least make some beer money. You know?
Yeah. It's fascinating technology. I think it's just amazing. You can think of something in your head and then have it in your hand in, you know, a couple of days. Pretty amazing.
Right? Yeah. It's a very surreal experience, because yeah, you sit there, you have an idea in your head, and then you're like, hey, and then you go sit down at the computer, and then a couple hours later, you've kind of, well, there's some things about that idea I didn't like, and you've changed it a little bit, and then, you know, and then you get it all ready for print, and then you throw it in, and then boom, it's an object that you can hold. And you know, I've been doing it for pretty solidly for about a year now, a little over a year. And still, every time I pull that design, you know, the first design that I've made out of the 3D printer, it's like I get little butterflies, because I'm excited to see it, you know, and it's coming out of the ooze, you know, it's like some sci-fi kind of thing. You know, it just born out of light and liquid, and then you just pop it out, and I don't know, it's really cool.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on with us. I appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me.
Sure.